Hello, and a very warm welcome to Sapporo Gakuen University's Community College, Global Issues in English. And today's topic is plants and animals. Before we begin, as usual, I would like you to visit this site where you can find some vocabulary support and language exercises which will help you with the topic. Also, I think it's important I've put the vocabulary here because it is very challenging and quite difficult. Perhaps you should look at these before we start because it is important for understanding the topic. All right, these are the classifications of animals, the kinds of animals that we have on the plant, and on the left side you can see the mammals and the birds and the fish and the reptiles and amphibians, and then on the right side the insects and other animals. So a very wide classification. Also, we have something called the IUCN Red List. These are animals that are in danger, and we can see from the top to animals that are extinct. There are no known living animals. They have gone. Extinct in the wild means they are only in zoos, not outside of the zoos. Critically endangered, very high risk of extinction, and then endangered, a high risk of extinction in the wild, outside of zoos, and then vulnerable, near threatened, and at the bottom, least concern are the animals and plants that we don't need to worry about. Extinction is not new. Extinction is a natural process, and more than 99% of all the living things on the earth have become extinct at some time. However, we can see what we call mass extinctions, and we can see at the top right, you have the number 6. This is today. Number 5 was about 60 million years ago, and that is when the dinosaurs disappeared from the earth about 66 million years ago. And we can see that, in fact, in history, there have been 5 mass extinctions, and they have destroyed a huge, huge number of animals. And it's very likely now that we are in number 6, which is a man-made extinction event. We live in a world of insects. Most of the animals on the planet are insects. You can see all of the blue, the light blue, are insects. The green, down on the bottom right half, is amphibians, mammals, reptiles, birds, and fish. So we really make up a very small part of living things on the earth. In addition, there are many, many more plants than there are animals. So all life on Earth is 82% are plants, 13% are bacteria, and 5% are everything else. And if you look at that very small dot in the middle of the 5%, that is 0.01%, and that is humans, that is us. So we're really a very small part of the family of animal and plants on Earth. Now here's a quiz for you. How many plants and animals become extinct every day? Do you think it's about 17, 29, 63? What do you think? And the answer is, I'm sorry, it was a trick question, because the answer is nobody knows. We don't know. Why? Because we don't know how many plants and animals there are on Earth. How many plants and animals are there? It's estimated that there are between 10 million and 100 million plants and animals on the Earth. So you can see it's a very wide range, 10 million to 100 million. We really, really don't know how many there are. Of all these plants and animals, scientists have identified about 2 million of them. So we know the names of about 2 million of the plants and animals on Earth. With big animals, it's rather easy to count. We can count them easily. For example, the African elephant, we can see about 100 years ago, there were 10 million elephants in Africa. And we can see that on the right side, very sadly, we are down to about 350,000, and that number is going down and down. Again, another large animal we can count is the orangutan from Borneo. In 1990, there were 204,000 orangutans. In 2015, only 104,000. So about half of the orangutans have disappeared. So with large animals, we can count them. But with small animals, as we get smaller and smaller, it's very, very difficult to count. We don't know how many there are. So how can we measure rates of extinction? How do we know? Well, the answer is there is something called the Living Planet Index, and it has studied data from 20,811 populations, 4,392 species, between 1970 and 2016. And of course, this is continuing. So looking at those numbers and seeing how many of those have become extinct, we can expand our graph and find out how many animals and plants are becoming extinct. So all of the animals on the Living Planet Index, we can see on the left side is 1970, and that's the number 1, down to 2016 on the right. We have lost 68% of those animals. And looking around the world, in North America, it's minus 33%. In South America, minus 94%. Again, we must be careful. This is not the extinction of all plants and animals in South America. This is only the decrease in the numbers of those plants and animals that are on the living index. Don't make a mistake. This is not all of the plants and animals. Most of these examples will come from the Amazon area, which is especially endangered. In Eurasia, it's minus 24%. In Asia, it's minus 45%. And in Africa, it's minus 65%. So we can see around the world, we have very serious problems in the decrease of the numbers of plants and animals. And the list that we have shows that there are 32,000 species that are threatened with extinction. And we can see 41% are amphibians, frogs especially. Animals that live in wetlands are particularly endangered. And then mammals, conifers, trees, birds, sharks, corals, and other animals. Well, why is this happening? This is a problem. And these are the answers. So at the top, we can see changes in land use, habitat loss, buildings for cities and roads and bridges, but also destructions of forest and other areas to make farmland. Changing in land use is causing a lot of animals to disappear. Overexploitation means overfishing and hunting. Then invasive species and diseases coming from other countries. Pollution is a problem, and also climate change. Now let's look at habitat loss. You can see this is in Indonesia. There is just one tree in this area. All the other trees have been cut down. And if you look very, very carefully towards the top in the middle of the tree, there is an orangutan. Can you see it? Now, this orangutan has lost its home, it has no food, it has nowhere to live, its life is in danger. This photograph comes from a documentary movie called Green, and the address is at the bottom of the screen, and I very much recommend that you visit it and watch it. It's a very powerful documentary, and it's not difficult to understand because there is no language, only pictures. Highly recommended and rather shocking. Another example of habitat loss is simply deforestation, cutting down the trees to make farms, especially in South America, to grow corn and soybeans to feed to cows. In Indonesia, a lot of the deforestation is for palm oil plantations. Palm oil is used in many, many things that we use. We can find it in things like pizza and donuts and chocolate, shampoo, soap, ice cream, cooking oil, etc., etc. It's a long list. In fact, about 50% of all the packaged products we buy in the supermarket contain palm oil. And the palm oil, much of it comes from Indonesia, and we can see the bottom picture. All of the forest has been destroyed to make these palm oil plantations. We can see this rather dramatically in this picture of the Borneo forest cover. On the left, the green is in 1973, how much forest there was And then on the right in 2010, you can see that a lot of the forest has disappeared. Wetlands are especially endangered. We've lost 87% of our wetlands in the past 300 years, 35% in the last 30 years. And 25% of wetland plants and animals are at risk of extinction. So these are very, very endangered areas. This picture is from Kushiro, and we're very lucky that it has not been destroyed for farming because it is a very valuable area for plants and animals. Wetlands include lakes and rivers and streams and estuaries and mangroves. Again, mangroves are very, very valuable for ecosystems and plants and animals. Overexploitation, remember, was another example of animals becoming extinct, and particularly overfishing. We looked at this in another talk. About 30% of all the fish in the sea are endangered. We are simply taking too many fish from the sea. Another example of overexploitation is illegal hunting. This is called poaching, especially in Africa, where parts of animals are hunted illegally and killed. We can see on the top a lion, very shocking, and on the bottom ivory. Another example of ivory, the picture on the top right, those look like little houses. In fact, that is ivory. This was taken by the government of Kenya, and the government of Kenya decided to burn the ivory so it could not be exported and turned into souvenirs and household decorations. Another example is invasive species, which we saw. The picture on the left is kudzu, which is a Japanese plant. In Japan, it doesn't grow so wild, but in other countries, it can become out of control. And we can see this picture from China. The plant has taken over most of the village and the houses. Another example of invasive species is the American mink. We can find this all over the world. It's common in Hokkaido and parts of Tohoku and does a lot of damage to native plants and animals. One of the other reasons for extinction is pollution. The picture on the right is pesticides and fertilizers. Of course, they kill a lot of unwanted insects, but they also kill important insects and the birds that eat those insects. And the picture on the bottom left is chemicals. We can see in that kind of water, no animals, plants, or fish can live. The other example we can see now, the final one, is climate change. The planet is becoming warmer and warmer, and some animals cannot survive. The picture on the right is a small rat or mouse from Australia. The other picture is a polar bear. The ice is disappearing where it hunts, and it has no food. And if we look at this picture, we can see the reasons for animals and plants disappearing. The red color, the deep red color on the left side shows habitat loss, which is damaging the birds, the reptiles, and amphibians and mammals. Not so much the fish. The fish are more damaged by exploitation, by overfishing, of course. And the blue and green on the right side are climate change, invasive species, etc., etc. And we can see perhaps that climate change will become more and more serious in future. Birds, we can see, this is from North America. We can see the figure from 1970 is the right-hand side, and all of the birds, except for a few, the water birds down at the bottom, have increased. All of the other birds are decreasing. As I say, these are birds in North America, but we can imagine the pattern is the same all around the world. Birds have a particular problem with invasive species. Rats and mice will often eat the eggs of wild birds. Domestic cats, pets, kill a lot of birds, especially in countries like New Zealand, where birds cannot fly. They are very easy for cats and perhaps dogs to catch and kill. And also we can see mink and goats and pigs and other animals causing a lot of damage to local birds. And here's a little quiz. What's the most common bird in the world? Do you think it is a crow or a sparrow, or what kind of bird do you think is the most common bird in the world? The answer is the chicken. About 7% of all birds in the world are chickens. And if we could possibly take the weight of all birds in the world, chickens will make up 70% of all the mass of birds in the world. So chickens, a man-made industrial object, has become the most common bird in the world. Insects are also threatened. The ones we are familiar with, the number 2 is the butterfly, of course, 53%, beetles, bees, and dragonflies, all of the other insects going down. And we can see a total decline over the last 10 years of 41%. Among the insects, very useful insects are what we call pollinators. Pollinators are the birds that fly from flower to flower. Especially famous, of course, are bees that give us honey, but in fact, many, many other insects and birds pollinate plants, which are very important for our food. In fact, 30% of all the food we eat needs pollination. All of the fruit, many of the vegetables that we need must be pollinated. So these are very important insects in our lives. And plants. We know of a total of about 8 million plants and fungi, but we only have data on about 2.1 million of them. So we do know a huge number of plants and fungi, but we don't know exactly how many there are. Thousands of new plant species are being discovered every year, even today. 1,942 new species of plant, 1,886 species of fungi in 2019, and 40% of these are endangered. We can see plant extinctions around the world that we know about. Rather surprisingly, on the left, we can see Hawaii is losing a lot of its plants. The area of the Amazon in South America, Madagascar on the coast of Africa, Indonesia, and Australia also losing a lot of its plants and animals. And the reason for plants and animals disappearing are the same as the others. It's habitat loss, pollution, climate change, etc., etc. And we can see that the number of endangered species is rising year by year. From 2007 to 2019, it has almost doubled and is a serious and ongoing problem. So what can we do? Well, we need more and more data. We need more and more diversity, i.e. a wide range of plants and animals. Things like seed banks, sanctuaries and protected areas, reforestation, planting trees, and habitat restoration projects are all important. One of these is something called the International Barcode of Life. IBOL is a DNA data bank. In its first 5 years, it has made DNA barcodes for about 500,000 species. It's very, very active in Costa Rica, which is where it is based, and providing a lot of new information about the kinds of animals and insects and plants that we have. Another famous place is this global seed vault in Norway, in a very cold place in the world, underground. It is a place where they are collecting seeds from all around the world, and there are now over 967,000, almost 1 million seeds now in this seed bank. So in future, if these plants become extinct, we will have seeds to reproduce them. Biodiversity, also very, very important. We can see the top picture. This is what we call monoculture, which is only growing one kind of plant in an area. This is not good for biodiversity. They need more pesticides. They have no natural ecosystem, and they are vulnerable to disease. They can catch disease very easily. If we look at the bottom picture, we can see that is diversity, many varieties of corn, many varieties of taste, natural security against disease. If one of these corn plants becomes diseased, other corn plants are strong naturally against the disease and can protect the species. And of course, they are part of a wider ecosystem. There are different types of insects and birds attracted to each of these. Sanctuaries and national parks also very, very important. We can see animal rescue programs, animal protection programs, animal breeding programs, these particularly in Africa, and if possible, returning animals to the wild. We can see the bottom picture, animals taken back into the wild where they can enjoy a natural life. Zoos, yes, zoos are pluses and minuses. Some, for example, the top picture is San Diego Zoo. It is a very famous zoo. It has very positive education programs and breeding programs and lots of space. Other zoos, not so good. The animals are not in a natural habitat. They are crowded. They don't have so much space. And it's very sad that most zoo animals can never return to the wild. Zoo animals must live all of their lives in a zoo. So in conclusion, we can see that all of these things are a result of human activity. We look at all of these things, they are human activity. But we must remember that we are responsible for these plants and animals. We are part of a global family of animals, and if we damage one group or species, we damage ourselves. The English poet John Donne said, "No man is an island. We are all connected. And if we don't take care of these man-made problems, we will have a very dark future." The survival of plants and animals also means the survival of human beings. Thank you for watching. See you again.